Emma Prescott clutched her 6-month-old son closer to her chest as the whispers followed her down the dusty main street of Silver Creek, Arizona Territory, 1877. The afternoon sun beat down mercilessly, but the cold stares of the townspeople burned worse than any desert heat. She'd made the mistake of thinking a small frontier town might be more forgiving than Boston society. She'd been devastatingly wrong. "Shameless hussy," Mrs. Holloway muttered just loudly enough to be heard as Emma passed the general store. "Parading that bastard child around like we should accept such sinful behavior." Emma quickened her pace, keeping her eyes forward. Little James fussed in her arms as if sensing his mother's distress. She bounced him gently, whispering soothing words as she hurried toward the modest cabin she rented at the edge of town. "It's just us against the world, my sweet boy," she murmured, pressing a kiss to his forehead. "But we'll manage, we always do." 6 months in Silver Creek had taught Emma that frontier justice extended beyond outlaws and cattle rustlers. The moral code was strictly enforced through cruel gossip and deliberate exclusion. A woman with a child and no husband might as well have worn a scarlet letter pinned to her dress. As she rounded the corner past the saloon, Emma collided with a solid wall of muscle. Strong hands steadied her before she could lose her balance, and she looked up into the most piercing blue eyes she'd ever seen. "Whoa there, madam." His voice was deep and honeyed with a slight Texas drawl. "I apologize for not watching where I was going." Emma clutched James tighter, stepping back immediately. The man before her stood over 6 feet tall, broad-shouldered and lean-hipped in the way of men who spent their lives on horseback. His dark brown hair was a touch too long, brushing the collar of his worn leather vest. A dusty cowboy hat hung from a cord at his back, suggesting he'd just arrived in town. "The fault is mine," she said stiffly, averting her eyes. The last thing she needed was more gossip about her conversing with strange men. He tipped his head, studying her with curious eyes. "Name's Tucker Layton," he offered. "Just rode into town looking for work." "Good day, Mr. Layton," Emma replied, sidestepping him and continuing on her way without offering her name in return. "Madam," he called after her, "you dropped this." She turned to see him holding the small cloth doll her son had been clutching. James was already reaching for it with chubby hands. Reluctantly, she walked back. "Thank you." Tucker smiled as he handed over the doll, his eyes softening when they landed on the baby. "Handsome little fella you got there. What's his name?" "James," she answered automatically, then silently cursed herself for engaging. "Strong name for a strong boy," Tucker said with a gentle smile that transformed his weathered face. He touched the brim of an invisible hat in salute. "Hope to see you both around town, madam." Emma nodded curtly and hurried away, feeling his eyes on her back. She didn't need to look to know the townspeople had witnessed the exchange, adding new fuel to their gossip fire. By supper time, they'd have her entertaining the dusty cowboy in her cabin. What they didn't know, what nobody knew, was how desperately alone she truly was. How every day was a battle just to feed her son and keep a roof over their heads. How the shame others tried to heap upon her paled in comparison to the crushing weight of responsibility she carried. Emma had fled Boston with nothing but a small inheritance from her grandmother and the clothes on her back when her prominent family had discovered her condition. The father of her child, a charming banker's son who'd sworn his undying love, had promptly denied any responsibility and become engaged to a socially acceptable debutante. Her parents had offered her a choice: give up the baby for adoption or be disowned. She'd chosen her child. 6 months in Silver Creek had drained most of her funds. The seamstress work she did barely covered their meager expenses. Each day brought her closer to destitution, but she refused to let fear consume her. James was worth every sacrifice. Later that evening, as Emma rocked James to sleep in their tiny cabin, a knock at the door startled her. She froze, listening. No one ever visited except Mrs. Peterson, her elderly neighbor who occasionally brought soup or watched James while Emma worked, but Mrs. Peterson would have called out. The knock came again, more insistent. Emma gently laid James in his cradle and grabbed the small pistol she kept for protection. "Who's there?" she called, her voice steadier than she felt. "Tucker Layton, madam. We met earlier today." She frowned, keeping the gun at her side as she cracked the door open. "Mr. Layton, it's highly inappropriate for you to call on me at this hour." In the fading light, she could see him more clearly. He'd cleaned up, his face freshly shaved, hair combed back. He held his hat in his hands, a nervous gesture that seemed at odds with his imposing presence. "I apologize for the intrusion," he said quietly, "but I have a proposition that couldn't wait till morning." "A proposition?" Emma's grip tightened on the gun. "I think you've mistaken me for someone else, sir." Tucker's eyes widened as understanding dawned. "No, madam, nothing untoward. I've been hired by Widower Jameson to manage his ranch. It's good pay, but the cabin needs a woman's touch, and his 3 young ones need looking after." Emma's confusion must have shown on her face because he continued hurriedly, "I'm looking to hire a housekeeper, madam. Room and board for you and your boy, plus wages. The ranch is 5 miles outside town." Hope and suspicion warred within Emma. "Why me? You don't know anything about me." "I know enough," he said simply. "I asked around. Folks say you're a hard worker, keep to yourself, and care for your boy proper. That's more than sufficient in my book." Emma knew what else those folks had said about her, but Tucker's expression remained respectful, without a hint of judgment. "I'm not looking for charity, Mr. Layton, and I'm not offering any. The job's real and the need's genuine." He shifted his weight. "Truth is, I'm not much good with children or cooking. Place needs a woman's hand, and you look like you could use the opportunity. 5 miles from town might suit you both just fine." Emma hesitated. The prospect of escaping the daily humiliation of town life was tempting, but trusting a man she'd just met. "I'd need to think about it, of course." Tucker reached into his pocket and withdrew a folded paper. "Here's the terms written plain. Pays fair. You'd have your own room with the baby. No funny business, I give you my word." She accepted the paper, noting his neat handwriting. "I'll let you know my decision tomorrow." Tucker nodded, replacing his hat. "I'll be at the Silver Dollar Saloon until noon. After that, I head back to the Jameson place." He paused, his expression softening. "It's a good opportunity, Miss Prescott, Emma Prescott, Miss Prescott." He touched the brim of his hat. "Good evening to you." Emma watched him walk away before closing and bolting the door. She unfolded the paper with trembling hands. The terms were indeed fair, better than fair. Room and board plus wages that exceeded what she made as a seamstress. The duties seemed straightforward: cooking, cleaning, and helping care for Mr. Jameson's 3 children. She sat at her small table, weighing her options. Stay in town where everyone scorned her, but where she at least knew what to expect. Or risk everything on a stranger's offer that seemed too good to be true. James whimpered in his sleep, his tiny face scrunching in distress until Emma gently stroked his cheek. For him, she would risk it all. The next morning dawned clear and bright, typical for early spring in the Arizona territory. Emma packed their few belongings and dressed James in his best clothes. She paid a visit to Mrs. Peterson, explaining her decision and thanking the old woman for her kindness. "You be careful, child, Mrs. Peterson warned. Men can have ulterior motives." "I know," Emma assured her, "but staying here offers little future for James." At precisely 11 o'clock, Emma entered the Silver Dollar Saloon, causing conversations to halt as all eyes turned to her. She spotted Tucker at a corner table, nursing a coffee while reviewing some papers. He rose immediately when he saw her, pulling out a chair. "Miss Prescott, Mr. Layton," she acknowledged, sitting primly while adjusting James on her lap. "I've decided to accept your offer with one condition." "Name it." "If at any time I feel uncomfortable or that James is unsafe, we leave without notice." Tucker nodded solemnly. "That's fair. I'd expect nothing less from a protective mother." The journey to the Jameson ranch was made in relative silence. With Emma and James riding in a small wagon Tucker had rented for transporting her belongings. The ranch came into view just as the afternoon heat reached its peak, a modest but well-built house with several outbuildings, corrals, and cattle grazing on the surrounding grassland. "It's not fancy," Tucker commented as they approached, "but it's sturdy and decent inside." Emma noticed the obvious neglect: immediately overgrown paths, broken fence rails, shutters hanging askew. "How long has Mr. Jameson been widowed?" "Nearly a year. His wife died in childbirth, the baby too." Her heart contracted. "And the children?" "Girls 8, boys are 6 and 4. They've been running wild since their pa retreated into grief. Housekeeper quit 2 months back." As if summoned by their conversation, 3 dusty children appeared around the side of the house, staring at the approaching wagon with undisguised curiosity. The oldest, a girl with wheat-colored braids, stepped forward protectively. "Are you the new housekeeper?" she called. Tucker pulled the wagon to a stop. "This is Miss Prescott and her son James. Miss Prescott, meet Sarah Thomas and little Joe Jameson." Emma climbed down carefully with James in her arms. She approached the children with a gentle smile. "Hello, it's very nice to meet you all." The youngest boy, Joe, peeked from behind his sister. "Is that a baby?" "Yes, this is James. He's 6 months old. Can I touch him?" Joe asked, edging forward. Emma knelt, bringing James to the child's level. "Gently, like this," she demonstrated, letting Joe stroke James's hand. Sarah studied Emma warily. "Pa said no one decent would take the job, said we'd have to make do." "Well," Emma replied, meeting the girl's gaze steadily, "I'm here now, and I intend to do my very best for all of you." "Where's your husband?" Thomas asked bluntly. Emma stiffened, but before she could answer, Tucker intervened. "That's not a polite question, Thomas. Now why don't you 3 help Miss Prescott get settled while I unload her things?" The children led Emma into the house, which was exactly as neglected inside as out. Dirty dishes piled in the kitchen, dust lay thick on every surface, and clothes were strewn about haphazardly. "Pa doesn't come in much," Sarah explained, her small shoulders squared with adult responsibility. "He sleeps in the bunkhouse since Ma died." Emma's heart ached for these motherless children who'd clearly been fending for themselves. "When will I meet your father?" The 3 exchanged glances. "He rides out early and comes back after dark," Thomas said. "Sometimes he doesn't come back for days." "I see." Emma set James on a relatively clean blanket on the floor. "Well then, shall we get started making this house a home again?" The next several days established a rhythm. Emma rose before dawn to start breakfast, clean, and prepare lessons for the children, who hadn't attended school since their mother's death. The work was exhausting but satisfying. The children, starved for attention, quickly warmed to her, especially when she told stories at bedtime and taught Sarah to sew simple patterns. Tucker proved to be an unexpected ally, repairing broken items around the house and bringing fresh milk for James each morning. He was unfailingly polite, keeping a respectful distance while offering assistance whenever needed. On her 4th evening, as Emma sat on the porch mending clothes while the children played with James nearby, Tucker approached with a troubled expression. "Miss Prescott, I should warn you that Mr. Jameson is expected back tonight. He's been on a cattle drive to Tucson." Emma looked up from her sewing. "I've been wondering when I'd meet my employer." Tucker shifted uncomfortably. "Frank Jameson is changed since his wife died, drinks heavily. Can be unpredictable. Are the children in danger from him?" "No," Tucker assured her quickly. "He neglects them but doesn't raise a hand. Just be prepared for harshness and maybe keep to your room once he arrives." Emma's spine stiffened. "Mr. Layton, I was hired to run this household. I won't hide away like some guilty secret." A ghost of a smile touched Tucker's lips. "Didn't figure you for the hiding type. Just thought I'd warn you." The sound of approaching hoofbeats ended their conversation. A horse and rider materialized from the dusk, moving slowly toward the house. Frank Jameson was a big man gone to seed, his once powerful frame now slack with drink and grief. He dismounted clumsily, squinting at the porch. "What's all this?" he demanded, waving at the children who had fallen silent at his approach. His bloodshot eyes found Emma. "Who the hell are you?" Emma rose calmly. "Emma Prescott, Mr. Jameson. I'm the new housekeeper Mr. Layton hired." Frank's gaze swung to Tucker. "Told you not to bother, don't need no woman underfoot. The children need proper care," Tucker replied evenly. "House too," Frank spat in the dirt. "House was fine." "It was filthy," Emma interjected, her patience thinning, "and your children were half wild from neglect." A dangerous silence fell. Tucker moved subtly closer to Emma, while the children huddled protectively around James. "You got a mighty sharp tongue for someone in your position," Frank growled. "Heard about you in town, unwed mother. No decent woman would take this job, they said. Now I see why." Emma felt the familiar sting of shame but refused to show it. "I believe a child is a blessing regardless of circumstance, Mr. Jameson. Something you might remember about your own children." Frank's face darkened. "You don't speak to me about my children, woman. You're nothing but hired help and barely respectable at that." Tucker stepped forward. "That's enough, Frank. Miss Prescott has done more for your children in 4 days than you've managed in months." "This is my ranch, Layton. I'll speak how I please." "And this is my home now, too," Emma said steadily, "at least until you formally dismiss me. Your children are fed, clean, and learning their letters again. The house is in order. If my presence offends you, I'll gather my things and leave tomorrow, but I suggest you consider what's best for Sarah, Thomas, and Joe before making that decision." Frank stared at her, swaying slightly. His gaze drifted to his children, who were watching the confrontation with wide, frightened eyes. Something in his expression cracked, revealing the broken man beneath the bluster. Without another word, he stumbled toward the bunkhouse, leaving a heavy silence in his wake. Tucker exhaled slowly. "Well, that went better than expected." "Better," Emma echoed incredulously. "He didn't fire you outright." Tucker offered a wry smile. "Might be the first time anyone stood up to him since Margaret died." "I won't tolerate him speaking that way in front of the children," Emma said firmly, gathering James into her arms. "Or disparaging my son." Tucker's expression softened as he looked at James, who was contentedly gumming his fist. "No decent man would judge a child for the circumstances of his birth." "The world is short on decent men, Mr. Layton." "Tucker," he corrected gently. "After facing down the boss together, I think we've earned first-name familiarity." Despite herself, Emma smiled. "Tucker, then." Later that night, after the children were asleep, Emma sat at the kitchen table making lists for supplies they needed from town. The sound of boots on the porch alerted her to a visitor. Frank Jameson entered, sober and subdued. He removed his hat, revealing graying hair and a face lined with grief. "Miss Prescott," he acknowledged awkwardly, "I came to apologize for my behavior earlier." Emma set down her pencil. "I appreciate that, Mr. Jameson." He glanced around the kitchen, noticing the gleaming surfaces and neatly arranged dishes. "Place hasn't looked this good since Margaret." His voice trailed off, the name clearly painful to speak. "Your children miss their mother," Emma said gently, "but they miss their father too." Frank's shoulders slumped. "I'm not much of a father these days. You could be." Emma stood and poured coffee for them both. "They're wonderful children, smart and kind despite everything they've been through." "That's Margaret's doing, not mine." He accepted the coffee gratefully. "I never knew what to do with them even before. Now I can barely look at them without seeing her." "Grief takes time," Emma acknowledged, "but children need consistency, structure." "Is that why you stayed? After what I said about you and your boy?" Emma met his gaze steadily. "I stayed because your children need me, and because I needed the work." Frank nodded slowly. "Layton made a good choice hiring you. I won't interfere, just take care of my kids better than I can." "I will." Emma paused, weighing her next words, "but they need their father too." Frank drained his coffee and stood. "One step at a time, Miss Prescott." He placed his hat back on his head. "Good night." "Good night, Mr. Jameson." As spring melted into summer, life at the Jameson Ranch settled into a comfortable routine. Frank remained a distant figure, but he no longer stayed away for days at a time and made awkward attempts to interact with his children at supper. The children thrived under Emma's care, especially Sarah, who blossomed with female guidance. Tucker proved to be an unexpected constant in their lives. He took time each day to help Thomas and Joe with man things, as he called it, whittling simple toys, learning to care for the horses, basic ranch work suitable for young boys. He built a cradle for James when the baby outgrew the basket he'd been sleeping in, and often brought small treats for Emma, wildflowers from the range, a book borrowed from town, fresh berries he'd found while checking fences. Their friendship grew slowly, built on mutual respect and the shared care of the children. Emma found herself looking forward to their conversations on the porch after the children were asleep. When Tucker would tell stories of his travels across the Western Territories, or listen attentively to her dreams for James's future. One evening in late July, as a rare summer rain pattered on the roof, they sat in companionable silence shelling peas. "Why aren't you married, Tucker?" Emma asked suddenly. "You're good with children, kind, hardworking," he chuckled softly. "Never found a woman willing to take on a wandering cowboy, I suppose. You don't seem the wandering type to me." Tucker's hands stilled. "Wasn't always, had plans once, a girl back in Texas, family land waiting." Emma sensed the story hidden in his careful words. What happened, war happened. Tucker's voice grew distant. Came home changed. She'd married another. Can't blame her. 4 years is a long time to wait with no guarantees. "I'm sorry," he shrugged. "It was for the best. I wasn't fit company after what I'd seen. Took to drifting. Working ranches suited me, honest work, open skies." Emma recognized the deflection but didn't press. "And now, will you drift again once the Jameson place is running properly?" Tucker looked at her then, his blue eyes thoughtful. "Not planning on it. Found reasons to stay put." Before Emma could respond, James began crying from his cradle in the corner. She rose to tend to him, the moment broken but not forgotten. Summer stretched into fall, bringing the harvest and cattle roundup. Frank became more present as the work demanded his attention, even joining family meals more regularly. The children's initial wariness of their father gradually eased, especially when Tucker suggested Frank teach Thomas to ride. "You've worked miracles here," Tucker commented one crisp October afternoon as he and Emma watched Frank patiently showing Joe how to brush down his pony. "Never thought I'd see Frank engaging with the youngsters again." "Sometimes people just need permission to heal," Emma replied. "And a gentle push in the right direction." Tucker studied her profile, admiring the strength in her delicate features. "You're quite something, Emma Prescott." She blushed under his gaze. "I'm just doing what needs doing." "That's precisely what makes you remarkable." Tucker paused, gathering courage. "The harvest dance is next Saturday in town. Would you consider attending with me?" Emma's eyes widened in surprise. "In town, where everyone knows about James, especially there." Tucker's expression grew serious. "I'm not ashamed to be seen with you, Emma." "Quite the opposite. The gossip would be merciless. Let them gossip. I'd be proud to escort you." Emma hesitated, torn between desire and fear. "What about James? Sarah's old enough to mind him for a few hours. Frank will be here too." The prospect of an evening away, a normal, social evening with dancing and conversation, was tempting. But the memory of whispers and condemning glances made Emma hesitate. "I'll think about it," she promised. The night of the harvest dance arrived clear and cool. Emma had ultimately agreed to attend, bolstered by Sarah's enthusiastic support and Frank's gruff assurance that the children would be fine. She wore her best dress, a modest blue cotton she'd refashioned with lace salvaged from an old tablecloth. Tucker arrived at the main house promptly at 6, hat in hand, wearing a clean shirt and new leather vest that emphasized his broad shoulders, his appreciative gaze as he beheld her scent warmth spreading through Emma's chest. "You look beautiful," he said simply. The drive to town passed pleasantly, with Tucker pointing out constellations appearing in the darkening sky. Emma felt a growing nervousness as they approached Silver Creek, its windows glowing with lamplight against the dusk. "We don't have to stay long," Tucker assured her, sensing her tension. "Just one dance if that's all you want." "No," Emma squared her shoulders. "I'm done hiding as if I've committed some terrible crime. James is the best thing that ever happened to me. I won't act ashamed of him or myself." Tucker's smile was warm with admiration. "That's the spirit." The dance was being held in the newly built town hall, festooned with autumn leaves and harvest bounty. Music spilled from the open doors as couples and families made their way inside. Conversations faltered as Emma entered on Tucker's arm, heads turning, whispers starting immediately. "Ignore them," Tucker murmured, guiding her toward a refreshment table where the ranch foreman and his wife greeted them warmly. Sheriff Daniels approached, tipping his hat. "Evening, Layton. Miss Prescott, nice to see you in town again." "Sheriff," Emma acknowledged, surprised by his friendly manner. "How's that boy of yours doing?" the lawman asked. "Growing every day, thank you." "Good, good." The sheriff glanced around at the watching townsfolk. "People will talk, Miss Prescott, always do. But standing tall instead of slinking away. That earns respect in time." As he moved away, Tucker squeezed her hand reassuringly. "Shall we dance?" The musicians were playing a lively reel. Tucker led Emma onto the floor with surprising grace for a cowboy, his hand steady at her waist as they joined the other couples. Several people deliberately turned their backs. Others watched with open curiosity. "They're all staring," Emma whispered. "Let them." Tucker pulled her slightly closer than propriety strictly allowed. "They're just jealous I'm dancing with the prettiest woman here." Despite her anxiety, Emma found herself enjoying the music, the movement, the simple pleasure of being held by a man who looked at her with such open admiration. When the music changed to a slower waltz, Tucker's arm tightened around her waist. "Still want to stay?" he asked. "Yes," she replied, surprising herself with her certainty. They moved together in perfect harmony, the rest of the room fading away as Emma allowed herself to simply feel the music and the steady support of Tucker's arms. When the dance ended, she was breathless and smiling, the happy moment shattered when Mrs. Holloway deliberately stepped into their path as they left the dance floor. "Well, if it isn't the fallen woman and her champion," the older woman said loudly. "I'm surprised you have the nerve to show your face in decent company, Miss Prescott." The room quieted, attention focusing on them. Emma felt Tucker tense beside her. "I'm merely enjoying the dance like everyone else, Mrs. Holloway," Emma replied evenly, "flaunting your shame, more like. I hear you've ensnared poor widower Jameson with your charms." Tucker stepped forward. "That's enough, madam, and you, Mr. Layton." Mrs. Holloway's voice dripped with contempt. "Taking up with a woman of her reputation, what would your mother say?" "My mother taught me to judge people by their character, not town gossip." Tucker's voice was calm but steely. "And Miss Prescott has shown more strength, dignity, and decency than anyone criticizing her." "She had a child out of wedlock," Mrs. Holloway hissed. "She chose to keep and raise her child instead of abandoning him," Tucker countered. "Where I come from, that's called courage." Emma stood frozen, torn between mortification and a swelling gratitude for Tucker's defense. Mrs. Holloway's husband appeared at her side. "Come along, Martha, this isn't our concern." "It's everyone's concern when morality is flaunted, that's quite enough," interrupted a new voice. Reverend Parker, the town's minister, stepped forward. "Judge not, lest ye be judged, Martha. I believe our Lord had quite a bit to say about casting the first stone as well." The Reverend turned to Emma with unexpected kindness. "Your son is welcome at Sunday services, Miss Prescott." "Children are blessings, everyone." A murmur ran through the crowd. The Reverend's acceptance carried weight. "Thank you, Reverend," Emma managed. Mrs. Holloway retreated, her face flushed with anger. Gradually, conversation resumed around them, though Emma could still feel curious glances. "I'm sorry," Tucker said quietly. "I shouldn't have pushed you to come." "No," Emma surprised herself by smiling. "I'm glad we came. I'm tired of living in shadows." As the evening continued, several women approached Emma cautiously. Mrs. Peterson's daughter inquired after James. The blacksmith's wife mentioned needing seamstress work done. Small gestures, but significant. Later, as they drove home under a canopy of stars, Emma felt a weight lifting. "Thank you for defending me tonight." Tucker glanced at her, his expression serious in the moonlight. "I meant every word." "I know." Emma hesitated, then continued softly. "No one has stood up for me like that before. James's father, when I told him about the baby, he denied everything, said I was trying to trap him into marriage. My own parents believed him over me." Tucker's jaw tightened. "Some men don't deserve the title." "I never told anyone the full truth," Emma admitted. "It seemed easier to let people believe I was simply ruined. The reality was worse. You don't have to tell me. I want to." Emma took a deep breath. "Preston Blackwell and I were engaged secretly. His family would have opposed the match. They had political ambitions, and my family wasn't prominent enough. But Preston promised we'd announce it properly once he secured a partnership at his father's bank." Tucker remained silent, letting her continue at her own pace. "When I discovered I was expecting, I was frightened but happy. I thought it would force the issue, that we'd simply marry immediately." Emma's voice grew distant with remembered pain. "Instead, he claimed I'd been with multiple men, that he couldn't possibly marry a woman of such low character. He was engaged to a senator's daughter within a month." Tucker's hands tightened on the reins. "The man's a coward and a liar." "Yes," Emma looked up at the star-filled sky. "But his lies gave me James and led me here, to Silver Creek, where people treated you poorly. To a place where I could stand on my own, make my own way." She turned to look at him. "Meet people worth knowing." Tucker's expression softened. "Like Frank Jameson and his wild children. Like a certain cowboy who builds cradles and defends a woman's honor at harvest dances." The wagon slowed as Tucker pulled the horses to a stop. In the silver moonlight, his face was etched with emotion. "Emma, I'm not a wealthy man, don't have much to offer except hard work and honest intentions, but if you'd allow it, I'd like to court you properly." Emma's heart fluttered. "Tucker, you don't need to answer now. Just know that I admire you more than any woman I've ever known. And that boy of yours, he deserves a father who'll be proud to claim him." Tears pricked Emma's eyes. "James and I come as a pair. I'd expect nothing less." Tucker reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and brushed a strand of hair from her face. "Think about it." Emma nodded, too overwhelmed to speak. The winter months brought a gradual shift in Emma and Tucker's relationship. His courtship was old-fashioned and respectful. Small gifts, assistance with chores, occasional walks along the creek behind the ranch house. He took special care with James, fashioning tiny wooden animals for the growing boy and patiently encouraging his first tentative steps. Frank Jameson observed their growing attachment with gruff approval. "Layton's a good man," he commented one evening after Tucker had spent hours repairing the roof despite freezing temperatures. "Steady, reliable." "Yes," Emma agreed, watching through the window as Tucker showed Thomas how to properly split kindling. Known him to turn down offers from bigger spreads, better pay. Frank gave her a meaningful look. "Man's got reasons to stay rooted now." Emma blushed but said nothing. Christmas approached, bringing with it preparations that transformed the once neglected house into a warm, festive home. Emma taught Sarah to make paper chains and gingerbread, while Frank surprised everyone by returning from town with small gifts for each child. On Christmas Eve, after the children were finally asleep, Emma found herself alone with Tucker by the fireplace, watching the dancing flames as snow fell gently outside. "I have something for you," Tucker said, reaching into his pocket. "Not exactly a Christmas gift, more of a question." Emma's pulse quickened as he withdrew a small wooden box. Inside lay a simple silver ring with a small pearl. "It was my mother's," Tucker explained, his voice uncharacteristically nervous. "Not fancy, but given with all the love in my heart." "Tucker, Emma Prescott, you've brought light back to this ranch, to these children's lives, to my life." He took her hand gently. "I love you. I love James as if he were my own son." Would you do me the tremendous honor of becoming my wife? Tears filled Emma's eyes. Are you certain? There will always be talk, always be people who look at James and remember, let them talk. Tucker's gaze was steady. Any man would be proud to call that boy his son. I know I would. Yes, Emma whispered, happiness expanding in her chest like a physical force. Yes, I'll marry you. Tucker slipped the ring onto her finger, then gathered her in his arms, his kiss gentle yet filled with promise. The wedding took place on New Year's Day, a small ceremony in the Jameson Ranch house with Reverend Parker officiating. Frank stood as Tucker's best man, while Sarah proudly served as Emma's attendant, wearing a new dress sewn for the occasion. To Emma's surprise, several townspeople attended, including Sheriff Daniels and his wife, Mrs. Peterson, and even the blacksmith's family. The Reverend's acceptance had influenced some hearts. Others had simply come to know Emma through her occasional trips to town with the children. The most meaningful moment for Emma came when Tucker, after the vows were completed, knelt before 14-month-old James, who was toddling unsteadily beside Sarah. "James," Tucker said solemnly, his voice carrying through the quiet room, "I promise to be the father you deserve. To guide you, protect you, and love you as my own son from this day forward." He extended his hand, which the little boy grabbed with a delighted giggle. There wasn't a dry eye in the room as Tucker scooped James up and held him close, the boy patting Tucker's face with chubby hands. Later, during the small reception, Frank approached the newlyweds with an unexpected proposal. "Been thinking," he said, uncharacteristically hesitant. "This place is too big for me to manage alone, too many memories. Been considering taking the children to my sister's place in California, make a fresh start." Emma's heart sank at the thought of leaving the children she'd grown to love. Frank continued, "But seeing you two today, way the children have thrived, well, I'm wondering if you'd consider staying on. Not as hired help but as partners in the ranch, equal share. Could use Tucker's know-how and the children need you, Emma." Tucker glanced at Emma, deferring to her. "What about you, Frank?" she asked. "Would you stay as well, for now, maybe take some trips to visit my sister, see how it goes?" Frank's weathered face showed a vulnerability he rarely revealed. "Truth is, you've made this house a home again, Emma. First time since Margaret died that it's felt right. Be ashamed to lose that." Tucker extended his hand. "We'd be honored to partner with you, Frank." As spring returned to the Arizona Territory, the Layton Jameson Ranch became known as one of the most prosperous in the county. Tucker's innovative ranching methods combined with Frank's experience proved a successful partnership, while Emma's management of the household and care for the children created a harmonious home life that healed old wounds. Word spread about the unusual arrangement, but the prosperity of the ranch and the obvious happiness of the children silenced most critics. Frank, slowly emerging from his grief, began courting the widowed schoolteacher who had recently arrived in Silver Creek. On a warm May evening, exactly 1 year after Emma had first arrived at the ranch, she and Tucker sat on the porch swing, watching James chase fireflies with Thomas and Joe. "Any regrets?" Tucker asked, his arm around her shoulders. Emma placed his hand on her slightly rounded stomach. "Not a single one." Tucker's eyes widened. "Emma, are you certain?" She nodded, smiling at his stunned expression. "Doctor confirmed it yesterday, due in November." His whoop of joy brought all 3 boys running to investigate, followed by Sarah, who emerged from the house with flour on her hands. "What's all the commotion?" she demanded. Tucker scooped James up, swinging him in a circle. "This young man is going to be a big brother." The children's excitement was immediate and loud, with Sarah already planning baby clothes and Thomas debating names with Joe. Later that night, with the household finally quiet, Emma and Tucker lay together in their bedroom, his hand gently caressing her stomach. "I never imagined this life," Emma confessed. "After James was born, I thought we'd always be alone, always struggling. And now—" Tucker prompted, kissing her temple. "Now I have everything I never dared dream of." She turned to face him. "A home, a family, a man who loves me despite my past." Not despite, Tucker corrected softly. Your past brought you, James, brought you here to me. I wouldn't change a single step of the journey that led us together. In November, Emma gave birth to twins, a boy and a girl they named Daniel and Margaret, honoring both Tucker's father and Frank's late wife. James, now nearly 2, approached his siblings with solemn curiosity, carefully patting their heads as Tucker had shown him. Be gentle with your brother and sister, Tucker instructed, kneeling beside the toddler. Being a big brother is an important job, like you're my papa. James asked in his childish voice. Tucker's throat tightened with emotion. That's right, son, just like I'm your papa. As winter settled over the ranch, bringing peaceful evenings around the hearth, Emma often reflected on how drastically her life had changed. The woman who had once walked through Silver Creek with her head down, bearing the weight of judgment and shame, now held her head high as a respected ranch wife and mother. The townsfolk who had once whispered behind her back now greeted her warmly when she visited the general store with her growing family. Mrs. Holloway had moved away after her husband passed, but not before making a stiff apology prompted by Reverend Parker. 5 years after Emma and Tucker's wedding, the Layton Jameson Ranch hosted a harvest celebration that drew people from miles around. The house and grounds, once neglected in grief, now showcased prosperity and care. Frank, recently married to the schoolteacher, had built a small house nearby, giving the main house to the Laytons and their growing family. James, now 6 and starting school in town, had no memory of a time when Tucker wasn't his father. The twins, rambunctious 4-year-olds, followed their big brother everywhere, while 2-year-old Lily, the youngest Layton, tottered after them all. As twilight fell and lanterns were lit for dancing, Emma found Tucker watching her from across the yard, his expression as loving as the day he'd proposed. Happy, he asked when she approached, completely. Emma leaned into his embrace, watching James play with Thomas and Joe, now fine young men of 11 and 9. Sarah, 13 and beginning to blossom into a beautiful young woman, was helping Frank's wife organize games for the younger children. Remember that harvest dance? Your first time back in town, Tucker asked, his arms tightening around her waist. How could I forget? You defended my honor quite gallantly. Best decision I ever made was walking into Silver Creek that day and bumping into a fierce young mother and her baby boy. Tucker turned her to face him. I told you then that any man would be proud to call James his son. I meant it then, and I mean it now. Proudest day of my life was when that boy first called me Papa. Emma reached up to touch his face, still handsome despite the lines of hard work and responsibility that had deepened over the years. You've given us so much. You've given me more. Tucker kissed her palm. A family, a purpose, a home. As the music started and their guests gathered for dancing, Tucker led Emma to the center of the yard. Under the stars, surrounded by friends, neighbors, and their children, they moved together in perfect harmony. The woman once shamed for having a child alone now stood proudly in the circle of her husband's arms, her eldest son watching with a smile that matched Tucker's in every way that mattered. Look at our boy, Tucker murmured, nodding toward James, who was attempting to teach little Lily to dance, her chubby hands in his patient ones. Our children, Emma corrected, her heart full as she surveyed their family, the twins chasing fireflies with Frank's stepchildren, Sarah helping an elderly Mrs. Peterson to a comfortable chair, James now swinging Lily in circles to her delighted giggles. Our family, Tucker agreed, drawing her closer as the music slowed. Everything that matters. In that moment, under the vast Arizona sky with love surrounding her, Emma knew that every tear, every whispered insult, every moment of shame and fear had led to this perfect happiness, a life built not on society's approval, but on the stronger foundation of love, courage, and the tender heart of a cowboy who had knelt before a fatherless child and promised to be the father he deserved.